I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, let's talk about Iran, which has now made what The Guardian is saying, and I quote, a substantial nuclear offer in return for U.S. lifting sanctions. This offer was made by Iran to the U.S. via their foreign minister, Javad Zarif. And it looks like this is the real deal. Iran really is making this offer, and it seems that they're very serious about it. What do you make of this offer, Alexander? And what do you think the reaction will be from the Trump White House?
I think this is actually a serious offer. And can I just explain what it involves? We have the JCPOA, which involved Iran undertaking certain commitments with respect to uranium enrichment and disposal of its stock of uranium, and it also had to agree to certain inspections. And what was supposed to happen is that the JCPOA was supposed to only last for a certain period of time until the early 2020s. And then when it ended, there would be a second series of steps taken whereby Iran would then commit itself to further commitments, which would be negotiated, which would allow for even more intrusive inspections. And the United States at that point would lift all remaining sanctions that it had imposed on Iran. So it was supposed to be a two-stage process. What Zarif is now suggesting as a way out of this problem, out of this conflict, is that two-stage process is brought forward and that Iran undertakes all the things that it was going to undertake, which was supposed to be negotiated in the early 2020s. He's suggesting that this all be done now. Now, the reason he's saying that is that Donald Trump and various people in the United States have been saying that because Iran was not technically obliged to do these further steps in the early 2020s, it could have resumed its nuclear program in the early 2020s when the JCPOA was time expired. So Zarif is saying, right, we've heard that. We accept there might be a valid point to be made there. We are prepared to undertake this process now and immediately. Now, I think that's a serious offer. I think if the United States is really concerned about Iran having nuclear weapons, then this is something that they could work with and build on. And it would give Donald Trump a victory, because he would be able to say that the most serious problem with the JCPOA had been solved. However, it doesn't go anywhere near far enough meeting the demands that people like Bolton and Pompeo have made, which require Iran to do away with all its ballistic missiles and essentially change its whole foreign policy and change many aspects of its internal economic and political arrangements. Now, the Iranians will never do that. But what they're saying to the US is, if your real concern is about nuclear weapons, well, we have no plan to create nuclear weapons, but we are prepared to bring forward these arrangements now so that you can have an absolute cast iron assurance that that will never happen. We will see how the Trump administration reacts. Trump himself has given some hints that he wants to de-escalate. So Zarif, who is a very intelligent diplomat, seems to be trying to create a difference between him, that's to say Trump, and Bolton and Pompeo, and seems to be reaching out to Trump personally and saying to him, look, there is a deal to be done, let's do it. And there have been some signs that Trump, who's clearly had some advance notice of this offer, is receptive to it. Let's see what happens.
Let's hope, but I think you're definitely right that Trump stared into the abyss of war as he was being pushed by Bolton and Pompeo. He rightfully backed off. I don't care what the excuse was. I don't care what the reason was. If it was true or not true, who cares?
Yeah.
He backed off, and he did make overtures, Alexander. He did make overtures where he said, and I'll paraphrase, I'm ready. Sure, I'll talk with them. He said stuff like that. Sure, I'll negotiate with them. I mean, he did say it. And he moved some different chess pieces on the board, i.e. Rand Paul, which I think is a great move. Yes. And I think that Iranians are responding to those moves.
Yes.
And we'll see where they lead. But there's definitely been some overtures from both sides. And I think they're understanding each other's moves. The question, the wild card is are the neocons going to come in and screw everything up?
I think you've summed it up exactly. I mean, I think that what may also have happened is, I think part of the agenda, the strategy, was that they'd get the Russians to apply screws on Iran. There is a theory, which I personally believe, that Netanyahu told Putin that if you join the US, Israel, and Saudi Arabia to put the screws on Iran, we, the Israelis, will help you to get the sanctions that the US has imposed on you lifted, and will negotiate a rapprochement between the US and Russia. So Netanyahu staged this very remarkable summit meeting with the national security advisors of the US, Russia, and Israel in Jerusalem, which we covered in the video. And of course, Trump then met with Putin. And if that was the plan, then the Israelis and the US discovered that the Russians were not interested in that kind of quid pro quo, and they never are. I mean, they never actually deal in that way. They never say, if you give us this on Iran, we will give you this on whatever. I mean, that's not how the Russians have ever conducted diplomacy. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of Russian diplomatic deals. But I think it may have impressed on Donald Trump that he was not going to get Iran totally isolated, as he may have hoped, and he was not going to get Russia on side with this, and that might have made him more receptive to Iranian offers, when the only alternative that is being offered to him by Bolton, Pompeo, Netanyahu, and Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia is a war in the Gulf, which Donald Trump absolutely doesn't want. And I think we can now say that definitely. He does not want a war with Iran.
The interesting part about all of this, as I'm listening to Alexander, especially with Israel, is that out of all the U.S. presidents, I think that Trump actually has the most leverage over Israel, because I'm looking at all the things he's done for Israel. For example, the Golan Heights and recognizing Jerusalem. And, Israel has recognized him. Netanyahu has recognized him as the most pro-Israeli president.
Yes.
So if Trump was to just come around and say, you know what, Bibi, we're going to start negotiating with Iran, it puts Netanyahu kind of, on his back heels to say, well, now what do I do? Do I retract everything I've said about Trump and now make him to be the worst U.S. president for Israeli interests? I mean, Trump has maneuvered himself into a position where he's got a lot of capital to spend.
Yes.
In terms of, getting into some sort of dialogue with Iran.
Exactly. And
especially with Israel is concerned.
Exactly right. I think that's entirely right. I mean, I think what he's actually managed to do, whether by accident or by design, and I think with Donald Trump, I've always said this, and again, we get lots of criticism from people when we say this. Donald Trump is a more calculating man than he is given credit for being. I accept. I don't think he game plans everything, but he does have a knack of getting himself in strong positions on certain things. And it's possible that, just as it took a Nixon to go to China and a Reagan to do the deals with the Russians in the 80s. I can see how it could be Donald Trump who will in the end do the deal with Iran. At least we've got the first glimmers now that that might be happening. And so we've seen Zarif actually saying some rather complimentary things about Trump. I mean, he said that, his restraint was very wise, or some words to that effect. And we've seen Trump saying that, the Iranians seem to be interested in talking and we should be talking. What needs to happen now is that the US and Iran need to start talking directly to each other. And that needs to happen soon. And if that does happen, then I think we are talking about a potential breakthrough. And the JCPOA would survive, but it would be greatly strengthened because, as I said, this window that some people in the US have been worrying about, I've never personally thought those worries were valid worries. But, having said that, that window of risk in the early 2020s would have closed. And Donald Trump could say that he'd achieved that, and he would say it justly. I mean, he could say that his pressure on Iran has actually achieved an outcome.
Yeah, and Trump is probably the only president I can think of that would be able to use this on the campaign trail as a victory.
Yeah.
To say, the EU fucked it all up. I came in, I negotiated harsher terms, I got them to agree, and now we're better, now we're safer, and they're giving up their nukes. So he'll say that. They won't be able to bludgeon him and say he's anti-Israel on the campaign trail. No one will be able to say that either, not even Netanyahu. So he's got that as well.
Yes.
I can't think of another president that's in a stronger position to actually sit down with Iran than Trump. And I think you're right. The way he's maneuvered, whether by accident or by design, I don't know. But maybe the cards are there for something to actually break through.
Yeah.
And he put Rand Paul, which I think is a good sign.
Yes.
I think I think we're onto something, and maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves because this whole thing could fall apart, and we could be back to conflict. But if he got rid of Bolton or Pompeo, then I think, Trump is up to something with Iran.
I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. And we'll have to wait and see. But I come back to what I said. With Trump, it's always difficult to understand how he moves. But he is he's a more calculating man than people realize. And I think I come back to what I've said before. I think a lot of the things he says with more calculation than people think. And I think he does plan things more carefully than people realize. And frankly, he is about the only president who could make a diplomatic breakthrough with Iran and not suffer the wrath of Israel. Because
that's key.
Which is the only way this thing could really stick. It's the only way that it could be made to stick. So we'll see what happens. And anyway, I am mildly optimistic. Where things a few weeks ago looked terrible and disastrous, we seem finally to be moving a little forward.
But we saw the same thing with North Korea, too. I mean, you could say that Trump is kind of just repeating his process that he implemented with North Korea as well.
Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, it took Donald Trump to meet Kim Jong-un and to visit North Korea. And though it's not yet resulted in a deal, there's been a huge reduction in tensions in the Korean Peninsula, where people were at one time worried about a nuclear war. And who knows, perhaps Donald Trump will manage the same thing with Iran. And what a huge achievement that would be, bringing peace between the United States and Iran, which have been in conflict with each other ever since the Iranian Revolution and the change of government in Iran way back in 1979. So let's keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best and see what happens. But I'm mildly optimistic.
Very, very quickly, Alexander, what's the one sign that you're looking for to see if tensions do ease up, or if Trump is on this path that we're kind of, thinking about here.
The first thing that needs to happen is that there has to be a meeting between US officials and Iranian officials. Donald Trump likes summits, and if he can make a summit meeting with Rouhani, the Iranian president, that would also be a good sign. Perhaps even with Ayatollah Khamenei, who is the supreme leader of Iran, the real ruler of Iran. But the first step would be a meeting, direct talks between the United States government and the Iranians.
Would that be something that could be not publicized? For example, would that be something that they could do, in the background?
Absolutely. That's happened many times. I mean, Henry Kissinger went on a secret trip to China, to Beijing, and met with the Chinese leaders before it became known that there were negotiations going on between the United States and China, leading up to Richard Nixon's visit to China. And something very similar happened with North Korea. There were contacts between the North Koreans and the Americans at the United Nations in New York, and those paved the way for proper discussions between the United States and North Korea, and the Singapore summit between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump.
All right. Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much, guys. If you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Click on the notifications bell to make sure you get notifications every time we push out a new video. And you can also get a copy of this video in audio format. Visit us on iTunes and SoundCloud. Please donate to us on the Duran via PayPal, Subscribestar, and Patreon. That really helps us out a lot. So check out those links. They are in the description box as well. And of course, you really help us out a lot when you go to the Duran shop and pick up merchandise like mugs, t-shirts, polos, Russian Golden Eagle emblem mugs.
Well, absolutely, Alex. I mean, we produced this mug in inspiration because of, this is the Kremlin's symbol, and we saw Putin holding a mug like this, so we had to have one. And of course, I have to have one, and this is an absolutely great mug. And at this moment in time, I'm drinking jasmine pearl tea from it, which is the right mug for this sort of temperature and this sort of evening video that we're doing. So buy yourself a mug like this. Get yourself a fantastic polo shirt like this one, 100% cotton. Look at the wonderful blue color, the matching white Duran double-headed eagle pointing to the east and the west, as we always do when we cover all the geopolitical news. And I mean, it's an amazing shirt, as I can vouch, amazing mugs, as we can both vouch, because we both have them now. So help the Duran, come to our shop, buy these things, these wonderful things, and help yourself by owning them.
Yeah, which colors do you have now for the polo shirts? You have
I've got black, or rather dark blue, I think it is. I've got light blue with this really great white blue, and I've got the white one, and I've also got a black one. So I've got 4 really gorgeous polo shirts. Awesome. And before long, I'm going to have another one. I'm going to have a white polo shirt that I'm really. You
said the white. You said the white. You have the gray. You said the white is coming.
The white is coming.
The blue,
dark blue,
and the black.
Light and the black. Yeah. Exactly. Right,
cool.
So there you go. So
you got more than me.
I know. I've got polo shirts of many colors. So there we go. Right. So they're all great, and you should. Everyone who watches this program will be really enjoy owning one, as they will enjoy owning one of these mugs.
Okay, Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.